Besides, it pulls into the
Good stuff.
Sam, that's really funny, isn't
So,
it?
why do you think you're negative all the time?
I'm sorry.
All right,
She's
So-
not nice.
She really makes fun of me.
you guys can bicker and fight later.
Wait, is it allowed to find someone outside school?
If I don't see it,
It's
and I don't have to do
outside
anything
school.
about it,
I wanna see you guys fight it.
No,
Throw it
I'm
out.
not.
like if you go to Sam's house and brawl it out, it's between you and Sam and the police.
I'll give you some boxing gloves.
I
No,
know.
I'm not fighting.
It's all in your car. Yeah. Why? In case Coop wants to fight someone.
All right,
Scrap it.
Micah, Riley, Chuckles. So in 1939, a letter from Albert Einstein to a man named Leo Salazar, who was a German scientist that fled Nazi Germany, warned that the Nazis were developing an atomic bomb. So upon receiving this letter, Roosevelt commissioned a team of scientists to study how uranium could be used as a weapon. And basically, the United States was trying to catch up to Germany's ability to develop a atomic bomb. And that's where the Manhattan Project came about. If you shoot that pen, I'm gonna make you throw it away.
All of it the whole time.
That's fine. Or you can just put it down. If you shoot it, you're gonna throw it in the garbage.
Which pen?
The one that's currently in your hand that you're about ready to let go and shoot up into the air. That's the pen that I'm referring to. The one that I caught you in the middle of trying to do something with, and then you looked at me really guiltily and like, which pen are you talking about? The one that you currently just pressed the spring on is the one that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Not the one in your backpack necessarily,
Not the one sitting
Not the one
there.
that-
not the one sitting there that's not been deconstructed. So in December of '42, yeah, what's up?
Wasn't it Einstein that made the, or found the bomb?
His letter sparked it, but he didn't work on it. So in '42, there was a whole bunch of people that had started working on it, and he combined them all in one area and nicknamed it the Manhattan Project. The guy who was in charge was Robert Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer was a theoretical physicist. If you've ever watched The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon Cooper is a theoretical physicist. Einstein was a theoretical physicist. They put it in Los Alamos, New Mexico, because it was close to the desert, and they tested the bomb in the desert, and there wasn't a ton of people around. So if something went wrong, you wouldn't kill 10 million people in New York City. So they started developing two different bombs. They had Little Boy, which was a uranium-based bomb, and they had Fat Man, which was a plutonium-based bomb. development of the bomb, the making of the bomb, the testing of the bomb happened in Los Alamos. There were some other sites where they were doing other pieces of the testing, other pieces of the construction. One of them was in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The other one was in Hanford, Washington. That's the state of Washington. One of the unique things about the Manhattan Project is this was going on during World War II. So the majority of the people who worked on this project were women. Because the men were serving in the armed forces. Oak Ridge, Tennessee and Hanford, Washington didn't exist, really, until the Manhattan Project. So what they did is they built a town to house these workers so they could continue to work on this project without putting more people in danger. The towns they weren't on a map, so if you went and bought a map of Tennessee in 1943, Oak Ridge, Tennessee would not have been on that map. They were put in areas that were off the beaten path, where like nobody's gonna drive through one of these places randomly. Or the chances of them driving through it randomly are pretty remote because it doesn't really connect this place to another place. The road isn't marked, it doesn't have like Highway 7. It was just kind of a random road. But because it was a city that needed to house thousands of workers, there were stores and movie theaters and even roller skating rinks, which were a big thing back in the 40s, 50s. The other thing is these workers, as you can see here, because it was so top secret, they didn't even really know what they were working. So there's something called a Calitron machine. And they had these women monitoring these machines. What a Calitron machine does is it takes uranium, it separates uranium isotopes. The women had no idea what this machine was doing. They had really no idea what the end result of this whole experiment was going to be. They just hired them, trained them, and said, hey, if it gets to this point, call somebody. So basically they just spent their days staring at a dial, and it fluctuated back and forth, and if it got to the red area, you called somebody to come and help you out. Or maybe you pushed the button and stopped that reaction if you could. But you didn't actually go through the process of, like they didn't know. They weren't scientists. They had high school diplomas and they were put in this position to go do this thing. But they didn't have anybody else to monitor it. Again, because the majority of the men were off fighting in the war. So 1945, July 16th. A plutonium-based atomic bomb was tested in Alamogordo, New Mexico, during what was known as the Trinity test. So anytime you see a big explosion on a movie, chances are pretty good it was taken from footage that happened during these tests. Like if you see an atomic bomb or nuclear bomb drop during a movie, now, they've taken the film and they've CGI'd it, you know what I mean? But the reason they understand what it looks like is because they literally exploded a nuclear bomb in the desert in New Mexico. Now, not a huge nuclear bomb, but, I mean, nuclear bombs are nuclear bombs. And that is that.
You might wait on.